Maybe modern thrillers are just awful, and I have superior taste. Okay, that's not like really what I think. I've just been in a huge thriller slump. When I see thrillers on Goodreads or recommended on TikTok or wherever I find them, the premise always sounds so good and so juicy. I love a good mystery. I love a good thriller movie. I love to be surprised and horrified. It's fun. Horror is my favorite genre. Thrillers should just, it's like the sister genre. It should be something I like. And I pick up these books, and within like 50 pages, I am so sick of it. It's either the writing style is too slow, or the narrator is just like really annoying, or I've guessed the twist in the first couple of chapters and it just, there's no point in reading the rest because it's not interesting enough. And it sucks. I really want to be able to enjoy these books, and it just seems like maybe they're not for me. So, this week, we are going to find out if I can read thrillers or if I should just leave them to other people who can enjoy them. So I've picked 6 in a bunch of different categories. Hopefully one of these sparks something so that like I can better identify what I actually like in the future and I can stop DNFing. Let's get into what I picked. I'm going to try to read them in the space of a week. It's currently the 15th. I got a lot going on, but I think I can do it. I think I can at least get 4 done. I'd be happy with that. I'm going to try not to DNF them. I'm going to give them at least 50 pages to hook me into it, but I won't force myself if I'm hating it. But let's get into what I picked. In a Dark, Dark Wood by Ruth Ware was on my TBR. This has been sitting on my TBR since like 2017, I want to say. It's been a while, and I want to actually get to it. It seems like it's a cool premise. It's about a woman who goes on this bachelorette party for this friend that she hasn't seen in like 15 years, and she doesn't really want to go, but she feels kind of obligated, so she goes to hang out with like a bunch of old friends and like random strangers, and it's in this beautiful English countryside, far from anyone. Seems like it could be a good setup. And then something terrible happens, of course. So I think I've liked Ruth Ware's work in the past. There's at least one book of hers that I've read before that I didn't enjoy, but I feel like I found her through a short story anthology, I want to say. And I liked her work there, so this is a toss-up. Hopefully it's a good time. Things We Do in the Dark by Jennifer Hillier is one I picked specifically because it was a BIPOC author. I wanted to have at least one on my list. There's not that many to choose from. There's a lot of BIPOC mystery authors and horror authors, but when I was looking specifically for thrillers, they just weren't on the recommended lists a lot, which sucks. So Things We Do in the Dark seems to be about a woman who is accused of murdering her celebrity husband. I'm not super thrilled about this one. I don't have really high hopes for it. I'm going to give it a shot, though. It just seems very basic. Like, I don't think I'm going to have a lot of fun with it, but hopefully if the storytelling is really good, I'll get into it. So we'll see. The next one is Red Queen, a woman who's kind of a recluse, and I think it's set in Spain, and she solves this murder. It's supposed to be really, really good. It's supposed to be a TV series soon, so maybe if I like it, I can then watch the series. That's fun. But it was on a lot of recommended lists, so we'll see. It often, when I kept searching for it, it kept getting buried by Victoria Aveyard, which is annoying. So it was a little bit hard to find, but it does seem like a lot of people are recommending it and saying it's very good. It's giving me a girl with a dragon tattoo kind of vibes. One of the ones I'm really excited about is Going Zero. It's a spy thriller that reminds me of The Games House, which is one of my 5-star reads. In the name of national security, the CIA, in partnership with Silicon Valley wunderkind, have created the ultimate surveillance program known as Fusion. Ahead of its rollout, 10 Americans have been carefully selected to beta test the groundbreaking system. At the appointed hour, each of the 10 will have 2 hours to go zero to disappear. They will then have 30 days to evade detection and elude the highly sophisticated capture teams tasked to find them using cutting-edge technology. The goal is to see if it's possible to successfully go off the grid and escape detection. That's just a fun premise. It's a little bit different. I want to see if I like it. Bright Young Women is a book about a girl who was in a sorority where a serial killer murdered some of her sisters, and she teams up with someone else who was in danger by a similar serial killer or the same one to get justice. This is clearly based on BTK killings, if you know very much about that. I feel like this is going to be the most literary of the bunch. I feel like this is going to be better quality-wise than the things we do in the dark, but I don't know if I'm going to have fun with it. I don't know if I'm going to like it. I wanted to try it, though. It seemed like it has really good critical reviews. People really seem to enjoy it. I just don't know if it's, like, my thing. It'll really depend on, like, the dynamic between the two main characters, and if the main character is, I don't want to say likable, relatable, but, like, if I'm jiving with the main character or not. If I'm, like, there with her on the journey, or if it's just not really someone I drive with. I don't like, it's vibes. I'm hoping this is good vibes. I wanted to give this a shot. And the last one I was originally going to pick 5. I'm picking 6 because I'm not entirely sure if this last one qualifies as a thriller. It might be too much mystery. It might be too much horror. But this one, In the Palace of Shadows, is about a screenwriter who goes to this house and everybody who stays overnight gets murdered and, like, all of that stuff. Creepy old house. Person trying to do creative thing has to stay overnight when nobody else makes it. Love it. Love that premise. Eat that up every time. So, definitely excited for this one. I have it on my Kindle. I feel like I'm going to read it real fast. So, yeah. Those are my 6. If you've read any of them, please let me know. I'd love to hear. If you've read any of them, what your recommendations would have been. Swapping something out. There are a couple that I'm really pumped for. There's a couple that I'm, like, out of my comfort zone that I wouldn't normally pick. I'm trying to get, like, a good mix of everything so that I can say that, like, I've explored this genre and this is what I like and this is what I don't like. Gonna try to read it all in a week. We'll see. Okay, let's get into it. So in order to judge all of these books on kind of an equal playing field, I'm going to outline my wish list for a really good thriller. This isn't everyone's wish list, but it's what I like, and so this is what I'm specifically looking for. I'm hoping that all of these books hit most of these marks. It doesn't have to be like a 5 out of 5 sort of thing to be good, but, like, all of these things really help. So this is the criteria that I'm judging everything on. Number 1, I want it to be fast-paced. Slow burn thrillers bore me. I want things to be happening. I want to be figuring things out with the character. I want the characters to be 2 steps ahead of me. I want the plot to be, like, constantly doing things. I've read too many thrillers where we're just kind of, like, sitting in the character's head. She or he, usually she, bemoans her fate or, like, is wondering about all the intentions of everyone, and it's, like, going on for pages, and it's kind of like this circular thing that keeps going on, and I don't want that. I want things to be happening. Number 2, not Gillian Flynn style. I find a lot of derivative books have tried to be the next Gone Girl and not really done it as well as she has. I couldn't really read Gone Girl. It wasn't my thing. But, like, that particular style. And if you've read Girl on the Train or Gone Girl or any of those sorts of things, you'll know what I'm talking about. But, like, I'm not into it. It's not my thing. Number 3, a plot that mostly makes logical sense. Something that's not reliant on convenient main character blackouts. If amnesia is the only thing holding your plot together, it's not a good plot. And when I say logical, I mean that it has to be consistent with the book's internal logic. Like, if there's a rampaging dinosaur in the middle of one of these, then, like, that's fine, so long as they justify it and kind of work with it. I find that some of these plots can get very convoluted in a way that just doesn't feel good. Not that it, like, is unrealistic because all of these are unrealistic, but like it doesn't make sense with the world building that the author has done, and it doesn't make sense based on the character's motivations. Number 4, character that isn't a giant wet blanket. I find I'm not really vibing with a lot of, especially domestic thriller main characters. I find that they're just annoying. So, not a giant wet blanket. This is very subjective. 5, the main character needs to be at least as smart as the average reader. I don't want to be dragged along with this idiotic MC unless it's like, that's the plot. I think if you want to do idiot main characters, you have to do it very carefully. And I don't think a thriller is the right fit for that. Bonus, a twist I don't see coming. Alternatively, no twist is better than a twist everyone sees coming 100 pages in. It's a nice to have, but it's not something I demand out of every thriller I read. Okay, so it is Thursday. Let's see what I read. I managed to read 5 books, read/DNF. I am halfway through Palace of Shadows, and it's definitely turning out to be a horror and not a thriller. So that's fine. We'll exclude it. I'll talk about it some other time. It's good though. Liking it. Okay, so I'm going to talk about these in the order that I read them in. I'm going to judge them by the criteria that we just went over. Let's see how they were. First up is The Red Queen. So this was the book about a young woman who's a genius but a hermit, and she's paired up with this kind of bumbling, he's had a bad career move, and now he's trying to work his way back up detective. You've read that guy before. We've seen him. And they have to solve this murder, this terrorist plot thing. It's fun. It's good. It's better than I thought it was going to be. I thought I might be a little bit bored by it. I was worried that the writing style was going to be too close to Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, but this was very readable. The plot made sense. The character was not a giant wet blanket. I was worried at first because she has an anxiety disorder. And sometimes characters with anxiety can hold back the plot. If your whole thing is that you're too afraid to take action, that's not a great character trait for a main character, Nothing to say about anxiety in real life. But I didn't find that it held her back. It was good. Despite being kind of this genius type that we've seen before, the author did a really good job of making her sympathetic. They included this little thing about something her and her husband used to do about finding words that weren't translatable into Spanish, and sharing that with each other and finding these little words that they treated like treasure. And that was really fun to sprinkle in as she thought of them throughout the plot. That really humanized her. It was a good little trick, a shortcut. So that was fun. Both characters, including the Watson type detective, were smarter than me. I guessed some parts that were coming, but not all of them. So it was good. I had a good time with this. It's not my favorite book ever. I feel like I'm not going to read the next book in the series, but I would totally watch the show when it comes out. If you are more into crime and mystery than I am, you are probably going to like this more than me. It was a 4 stars for me. I'm totally happy with this. So, off to a success. It's just great. We found at least one. I don't have to give up thrillers forever. Bright Young Woman isn't a thriller. It's 2 character studies with the context of the BTK killer, who they never explicitly mentioned, but it's absolutely the BTK killer. This book didn't bother to invent a new serial killer or anything. This is BTK, but we're not gonna say his name, kind of a thing. I don't think this book was bad, but it definitely wasn't for me. I was way more into it in the first half, and then it started really slowing down. The pace just kind of like ground to a halt, where there wasn't really a whole lot of exciting things happening. It was kind of just like exploring how these characters deal with their trauma. Both Pamela and Ruth were the two main characters. And it's just not... things aren't happening. There's nothing that really happens outside of like the first main event in the book. One thing happens and the rest is just like fallout from that. And I was expecting the writing style to be a lot more literary than it actually was. It was a bit more readable than I thought it was going to be, which is great. The plot did make sense, but there wasn't really a whole lot of plot in there, and also a lot of it was lifted from real life. So I'm not going to like give the author a lot of credit here. But yeah, it ticks off the third box technically. The main characters were fine. Ruth was kind of a wet blanket, but like in an empathetic way. I found myself liking Pamela, the character that you're first introduced to, less and less as time wore on. Her character arc, like she's a very type A kind of person, with all of the anxieties and neuroses that goes along with that. And I think that's very relatable to a lot of people, especially girls who like to read books. But her character arc like let her stand up for herself more, but it didn't deal with any of the ways that she like can't give up control over anything. And like, she's definitely a neurotic mess. And like, I would have liked to see her deal with that actually, rather than just like being more standoffish throughout the like. It's good that she stands up for herself more, but I also like her less and less as a person, because she's just fixing one thing and not fixing the rest of it. Ruth's character also like follows the same arc of like Ruth is learning to stand up for herself. And I don't need that twice in one book. It would have been better if they each had like different journeys to go on rather than going on the same journey. And I get that the author was probably trying to parallel them, but it just ends up kind of being the same story twice. I think both of the main characters make decisions as well as they can, but they're not solving a mystery. They're not like figuring out the twist. They're not really doing much. Like they're trying to fix their own problems, and like that sort of kind of works, sort of kind of doesn't, as you know, is realistic in life. You can't fix all of your own problems. You can't like become the best version of yourself actually. It's just, I got a little bored with it. I just got bored with it. I think if you are more into slow burns, if you are more into really character driven pieces, if you really enjoy the psychology of true crime, you might like this a lot more than me. I don't think it was poorly written. I just think it wasn't for me. In a Dark, Dark Wood was absolute garbage. Just hot garbage. Just absolutely terrible. I don't know why I read the entire thing, frankly. That was my bad. The plot was an incredibly slow grind. It wasn't Gillian Flynn-esque ripoff, but it wasn't good either. The plot made sense, but the characters were not well written. The characters were these like built up stereotypes that she wanted us to recognize, but like I've never met or interacted with any woman who's actually like most of these women in the book. Like there has to be something that I can latch onto that be like, I recognize that anxiety. I recognize that confidence. I recognize that kind of vibe. And like, I didn't recognize any of the women there in that way. And they were just kind of cardboard characters. The author tried to set up one of the main characters to be a certain way that I just don't think is realistic or happens in real life, and also is not interesting. You can have characters that you don't really see in real life, but they also have to then serve a point and be interesting. And it was like hinging on this one character's whole personality that, like, doesn't, it's not a thing. This is hard to explain, and I feel like I'm not getting the point across, but, like, it was just, the characters were really poorly written, is what I'm trying to say. The main character, the main character sucked. She just sucked. We kept getting pages and pages and pages of her just, like, worrying about stuff instead of doing anything. And, like, a couple pages of that is fine, but, like, also once you've done that, you can't just keep bringing it up again. She's just, like, going in circles in her head, and it's not fun to be there. It's boring. She was so boring. I think if there had been more plot happening instead of the character just being an echo chamber of herself, I wouldn't have been able to guess the plot. But because I had so much downtime during this book, it was really easy to guess the ending. And the author, I think, was relying on this big twist that was not a good twist. 1 star. Just 1 star. To be fair to Things We Do in the Dark, I went into this not thinking I was going to like it. And I didn't like it. So I kind of did this to myself. I really wanted to give it a fair shot. I really wanted to try to like this. I wanted to find something good about it. I DNF this in the first, like, 30 pages. I couldn't. I'm just going to play you the first line from the audiobook.
There's a time and a place for erect nipples, but the back of a Seattle police car definitely isn't it.
I'm not a prude, but I just feel like the rock hardness of this woman's nips are just, like, none of my business. You know, that feels like I don't want to know that, and I don't care. I get that you want to, like, drag your reader in and make them wonder what the fuck is happening in the first line, but oh boy, it did not get better. The fact that this has such a high rating on Goodreads makes me feel insane. I don't know what book all of those other people read, but it can't have been this one. It can't. Like, I get that people have different tastes than me, but I have a hard time reconciling the fact that, like, I think this was just poorly crafted and people are hyping it up. I don't get it. Let's review it on the score sheet, shall we? I can't comment on the pacing because I didn't get far enough into it. The writing style was bad. The writing style felt very forced. Like she was trying, like the author is, like, dragging me by the hair through this book, and I didn't want to be there. The main character conveniently hit her head in the first chapter and doesn't remember anything. So maybe I didn't get that far into it, but there was a line at the end of the chapter, like the second or third chapter, that was like, but he doesn't really know me. No one really knows me. And I hate that. That feels so contrived and so forced. Show me that this woman is hiding behind a mask. Show me that this woman is a liar with so many dark secrets. Don't tell me. I don't care right now. Show me that she's a fucking liar. That's more interesting. It's more fun. Okay, and I can't comment on the character's intelligence, but honestly, my hopes for that are kind of low. So, okay, good news is we get to end on a positive note. I don't hate everything. Great. Going Zero was really fucking good. I think any time that you can get a reader to imagine what they would do in a given scenario, you've got a really good hook. The premise of this book, again, is a bunch of people are selected for this study, a joint between, like, the CIA and essentially Facebook, to see if they can go off the grid and not be found in 30 days. They have, like, 2 hours notice after they've been selected for the study. They can, like, prep some stuff beforehand, but, like, they get a text being like, it's go time, and they have 2 hours to disappear and then a month to hide. And I think immediately you start thinking about, like, what would I do if I only 2 hours to get out of Dodge? What would my plan be? And then you get to go through all of these characters and see if your plot would have worked, if people thought of things that you didn't think of, if there's like a good idea, or like see where you would have made mistakes. I think that's really fun. And I think a worse writer could have done an okay job with that premise, but I'm glad that this guy knows how to write, because instead of getting more boring as more people are found, he really does a good job of like ramping up the stakes, because we mainly follow one main character and the villain, kind of, and because we're switching back and forth from both of these characters. Okay, so let's go in and talk about the criteria. Reading this author bio, he's mostly a screenplay guy, and I think that really helps with the pacing. You can kind of feel it in the work. It feels very cinematic. It feels like an action movie at a lot of points, and I think that really helps make it feel like a page turner. There's also 20 participants in the game. There is a main character, and like one person that we're meant to be rooting for, but because we get to switch between this one main character and then all of the other people who are fighting in this game, that makes it more interesting, because we get like little breaks. When the main character's not doing anything fun, we get to go to someone who is doing something fun, and that really helps. The writing was really clean and tight. It was good. Nobody had convenient amnesia. Love that. There were definitely some points where I was like, that feels a little far-fetched, but I'm willing to roll with it. It's fine. It fit with the internal logic of the book, and it wasn't super jarring. I was happy to go along for the ride. I really liked the main character. The main character was definitely smarter than me. She kept me on my toes. I really liked being the last person to figure things out in this book. It was good. Read this one. Seriously, just like go out and read it. It's a really quick read. Go do that. So, what I have learned from this process is that domestic thrillers are not for me. But I had a good time with the spy thriller. I would read an actionier one. Again, I think I just have to like seek out ones that are specifically more action oriented and not ones that sound like they might be a slow burn. I feel like this gave me the chance to experience books that I never would have read otherwise. I don't think I ever would have read Bright Young Woman if I hadn't been like specifically looking for different kinds of thrillers. And I think that was an interesting one to read, even though the plot kind of got boring at the end. I'm glad I read it. So yeah, I'm glad that I don't have to give up thrillers forever. I'm glad that I found some stuff that I liked. Hopefully you got a little bit out of this too. I would love to know if you have any recommendations for me after seeing that, or if you're going to pick any of these up. Again, there's a couple I would highly recommend. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me on this journey. I'll see you next time.